Hello, Michel. Today we are talking about K for knowledge. I would like to start with a quote from you. It reads, "Truth isn't outside power or lacking in power. Truth is a thing of this world. It is produced only by virtue of multiple forms of constraint. It it induces regular effects of power. Each society has its regime of truth, its general politics of truth. That is, the types of discourses which it accepts and makes function."
All right. That's from the interview with these two Italian guys in the late 1970s.
Exactly.
What does this have to do with knowledge?
That's rather clear, isn't it? It's about truth, and knowledge is also geared towards truth, although there are very different types of truth: scientific truth and artistic truth, objective truth and subjective
Oh,
truth.
oh, that's to where you are heading. Well, I'm sorry that I have to disappoint you here. For some time now, we've been living in a society that has decided to assign the search for and the discovery of truth to a very specific institution, namely science. To paraphrase my old teacher, Georges Canguilhem, there is only one area in which we can talk about truth, and that is science. It's also interesting what he added, namely, there is no philosophical truth. The value of philosophy lies elsewhere than in truth.
But there are other kinds of knowledge. Scientific knowledge is just one example. There is also technological knowledge, religious knowledge, literary knowledge, and so on and so forth.
I have no doubt about that all. But this is all knowledge, savoir, not connaissance, as Canguilhem says, namely scientific findings or insights. Incidentally, I also pointed this out, and I quote, knowledge, savoir, is not the sum of scientific knowledges, connaissance, since it should always be possible to say whether the latter are true or false, accurate or not, approximate or definite, contradictory or consistent.
Okay, but what is knowledge then?
Uh, Perhaps you could have a look at the book I wrote on the subject, yeah? The Archaeology of Knowledge. There I talk about the discursive elements on the basis of which coherent or incoherent propositions are built up, more or less exact descriptions developed, verifications carried out, theories deployed. Well, these elements are something like the building blocks for scientific knowledge. I quote again from the book. They form the precondition of what is later revealed and which later functions as an item of knowledge or an illusion, an accepted truth or an exposed error, a definitive acquisition or an obstacle surmounted.
Sounds like an early form of science, then, a kind of ideology or belief system? Is that what you mean by knowledge?
Couldn't say it much better. We are dealing here with the elements that a discursive practice must have developed in order for a scientific discourse to be constituted, to be emerging at all. Overall, then, what we are talking about here is a movement, a development that leads from discursive practices via knowledge to science.
Can you please give an example of this?
I do, in the Archaeology of Knowledge. According to this, clinical medicine, for example, is certainly not a science, nor is psychiatry.
Both are discursive practices that work with a more or less explicit kind of knowledge.
Exactly. And to come back to the beginning of our conversation, medicine as well as psychiatry are obviously linked to power.
How about science?
It is, but in a different way than you might want to think. I would put it like this: science does not depend so much on what is commonly called society, rather, it is primarily conditioned by what I try to describe as knowledge. That is, by those discursive practices in which certain objects or topics are negotiated in such a way that they eventually reach the threshold of formalization.
And that's where science comes in?
Precisely. Uh, in theory, anyway. In practice, especially today, there are, of course, other actors and entities, other institutions that also claim the truth for themselves. There is a real battle going on in which science is actually in danger of being lost.
You mean fake news, post-truth and things like that. I see. Anyway, thanks for now. To be honest, I still don't really get what knowledge is. But what you said about science was very interesting. Maybe I should watch this video again from the beginning to understand it better. What do you think?
I don't know.